Ricardo Vargas. 2020 was going to be a great year. Most of my clients actually forecasted 2020 as a growth year. And then we all had a surprise. And when something this big happens, there's basically two things that you can do. You can actually give in to fear and despair, or you can look fear in the eyes and you can say, I refuse to be led by fear. Fear is just another input for decision making. It's not a command for action. So instead of falling prey to fear, because we CEOs in this room, we have the responsibility for thousands of lives, we just cannot afford to be led by fear. You can do two things. One is to laugh. Laughing is good. Laugh is a natural antidote to fear because it brings the positive chemicals to the brain, stimulates the immune system, and fosters adaptive response. But laughing is not enough. We should also learn. We should let go of our expectations, should laugh about our illusions of control, laugh about our self-importance, and learn, focus on the present, learn from it to transform it. My talk today is about the learning part, but please do not forget the laughing part. When the year started, the 2020 priorities for CEOs around the world were these four: growth, digital transformation, structural development, and there was a bit of concern with profitability, so there was the concern to protect profitability. When the virus hit the economy, everybody went into crisis management mode. And crisis management mode is good because it is about dealing with unforeseen, unexpected events that might be extremely harmful for our livelihoods, for our companies, for our countries. But the challenges that we are living right now, they are not unforeseen anymore. Back in March, we could have foreseen most of the things that are happening now. Choices were made that brought us here. So the consequences of those choices should have been integrated in our strategic plans in our companies. If they were not, then that's a task for us to understand why. Truth is that we should not be in crisis management mode anymore. We should already be adapted to today and transforming for tomorrow. And let's look at the challenges before the pandemic. Before the pandemic, CEOs reported a set of struggles that they were facing to achieve their goals. Business model innovation was there before. We knew we had to do it. We just didn't expect to have to do so much of it. Digital transformation. Of course, this was in the agenda, but it was in the agenda for the next 3 years. We just didn't expect to do it in 3 months. Skills gap. There was a major skills gap across Europe, also in Portugal, evidently, especially in the IT industry. Now, this skills gap is tenfold. There was a concern about engagement. Before the pandemic, there was research saying that only 16% of the people that work in companies felt completely engaged with the company. 84% of the people were actually going to the office to get some work done. Guess what? They're not going anywhere anymore. How's that for the engagement of your people? So, talent attraction and retention, developing the next generation of leaders, productivity, collaboration, all of this were already struggles before the pandemic. They just got worse. So, in a sense, we are not even living a new normal. This looks like the old normal on steroids and LSD. And we have less money in our pocket to deal with it. At the center of these challenges, there's one axis that can bring the solution to all the challenges around it. And this is leadership. Your people look up to you and expect you to bring the answers to all these challenges. That's what it means to lead. They expect you to be able to take the company with them, preferably, in the direction of a better future by answering these challenges. So basically, it's on you to do it. And I have bad news for you. You can't. These are the bad news. Good news are, no one can. You see, the point is that we have been thinking that leadership is about one individual, one person, to bring forward the solution to problems, to bring forward the strategy, to have all the answers, to have all the solutions. And the idea that leadership can be performed individually in a global, complex, volatile, and uncertain world is actually very bizarre, if you follow me. Because individual capacities are limited by our own experience. They are limited by our own values, our own education. How can anyone know all the answers? But actually, most of the people in the room, most of the people in the top of the companies belong to one of two generations. They are either baby boomers or Generation Xers. And we, of these generations, grew up with an idea that knowledge is power. It was kind of programmed in our mind. Knowledge is power. So when people were going up the hierarchy, what happens is that you actually shine individually. You sell your capacities, your knowledge, your skills, your commitment to the company better than anyone. That's how you go up the career ladder. You convince your boss that actually it was you strategizing everything, all the ideas behind the team that made things happen. It's natural. That's the rule of the game. That's how you go up the hierarchy. So when you are on top, guess what? People expect you, the hero, to provide the answers. It became all about you as you go up. And the point is that we fell for this knowledge is power long ago when it was still valid. But for 20 years, knowledge is available to anyone on the internet. Knowledge is nothing anymore. Knowledge is a commodity. So for 20 years now, knowledge was replaced by know-how. Knowing how to use the available knowledge free for everyone on the internet became the real power. But my friends, that was 20 years ago. We are living an era of artificial intelligence. Knowing how to do things, collecting information, any machine can learn that. Any machine can learn that. So, sense-making is the new power. Sense-making is the process by which a group of people creates a meaning for their shared experience. That's it. There's several processes to it. I don't go behind the scenes today because there's no time, but there's several processes to make this happen in a team. The point is, sense-making is what we need in an uncertain, chaotic, volatile situation where knowledge and know-how are not useful anymore. Not only they are not differentiators anymore, in the current pandemic situation, in the current situation of the market, whatever we knew, just throw it out the window. You have to get your collective intelligence. That's what sense-making allows for. Collective intelligence of your team together in order to be able to make sense of what's happening and understand the choices, not based on the past know-how, not based on the past knowledge. We have the wrong CEO job description. Know it all and do it all are not success factors. Quite the opposite. Everything that was done on the way up actually prevents you from achieving top performance of your company. I'm going to prove this in 2 slides from now. The point is that when you get to the CEO position, you need to develop the collective intelligence of your team. And I'm sorry, this is not about asking them for opinion, considering them in your decisions. This is way more than that. And you have to go into a mode of management where you generate a highly effective team that finds the answer. But by now, your executive team, they are still fighting the good fight to get to CEO. So why the heck should they cooperate, collaborate with the colleagues, the very people that they have to fight with for budget, resources, people, attention, impact in the company? Why should they do that? There's major trust issues in the organization at top level. The key to better leadership is in the executive team. That's what research says, but there's major top issues. Let me then show you what research says. I've been advising CEOs around the world for 25 years on how to impact their companies, how to improve the performance of their companies by working with the executive team. And what research shows is that if we change the dynamic of the executive team, you impact financial performance. This is measured, stuff like return on assets, return on sales, return on equity, stock performance, profitability, productivity. Innovation performance, both the ability to explore and exploit new revenue streams, employee engagement at all levels in the company, and strategic leadership in the company. This slide, and I'm not quoting, of course, evidently all the hundreds of papers behind it, this slide is a summary of research done in the last 20 years with thousands of organizations in all business sectors in dozens of countries in different continents. So if these are the KPIs, then what are the dimensions that we work with in the executive team that allow for this to improve? Well, some of them are trust, some of them are connected to communication, to conflict management, to alignment, to guaranteeing that the team does not have fracture lines. I say that all these dimensions together are about cognitive diversity. It's the importance of bringing cognitive diversity into the team and making it happen in the sense of sense-making for strategy. So these are the results, but when we look at what's happening in real life, what we see is that executive teams are leaving a lot of money and happiness on the table by not being highly effective. Money, performance, happiness, engagement, and leadership. This is on the table. We need to find different strategies in order to collect that money back, that value back into the company. So the problem is that executive teams are usually the worst team in the company, exactly where you should have the best one. If people have trust issues inside the executive team, just follow me for a second. Right now, companies have to bring the trust of the clients back. Companies have to gain the trust of the employees back. How are you going to do this when there's trust issues in the executive team? Executive team effectiveness is the elephant in the room. Everybody knows it's there. Everybody smells it. It stinks. It consumes all the oxygen. It heats up the room. It annoys everybody. It disrupts processes all over the company. But it's so big that no one dares to do anything about it. Usually when I say this, some CEOs say, nah, this doesn't happen with me. Yeah, actually, research done in 2010 and before in 2008 shows that CEOs think their teams are better than the teams believe they are. This is also what I get when I assess the dynamics of executive teams. There's a major gap between the assessment of the CEO and the assessment of the team. CEOs are usually convinced that they have a better team than they have in reality. So what I'm talking about here is that we need a transformation of leadership. We need to transform old-style CEO leadership, the macho, know-it-all, do-it-all type of leadership, into 21st century chief executive team leadership. Chief executive team was a name created by me for these highly effective, highly productive teams that come out of these development processes. If data, if best practices, if expert advice say that, there's value, there's money to be gained here, why are not all the companies going in this direction? A couple of years ago, a client of mine, CEO of a family-owned multinational, gave me a phone call 6 months after entering the company as CEO. And he said, Ricardo, the executive team has huge issues in performance. I'd like to have your help. Sure. I presented a proposal for a project. He didn't give me any feedback. I phoned him back a couple of days later, and he said, Ricardo, I know your work. I know this produces the results. I know these are the results we need. I'm not going to do this project. And I was like, okay, so maybe there's a missing link in the logic. My work is great, produces the results. You need it. You're not going to work with me. There's a step there. He said, you see, if I do this project right now, my shareholders will think I don't know how to do my job as a CEO. Interesting. Loss of credibility, fear of loss of credibility, loss of control, loss of accountability, loss of efficiency. This might weaken the CEO leadership. These are the usual objections I get when I speak about this. I have a chapter, actually, on objections on my next book coming out. Now, let's just look at the last one. Creating an executive team highly effective might weaken CEO leadership. Okay, follow me. So, how come that if you produce a highly effective executive team that gets more results to the company, weakens your position instead of reinforcing it? Because if you think this, then that just means that you fall for the leader must know it all and do it all. The knowledge is power mantra. And for the other objections, actually we have been implementing teams all over the organization for decades. Self-managed teams in manufacturing since the 1950s, from Japan to the world. We have been working with agile teams, doing all sorts of agile stuff in the company. R&D teams, process teams. We don't speak about loss of accountability, efficiency, control in those cases. In practice, there's only one objection behind this. Leadership is not about ego. Leadership is about results, not ego. We should care more for the results that we produce for our community, which includes all stakeholders of the company, than for our image as leaders. Companies are made, developed, and changed by teams. They are usually just not managed by one. So the main objection is fear. Fear of the new, fear of learning something different, fear of being able to laugh about ourselves, our illusions of grandeur, our illusions of control. So to finalize, we all want growth, innovation, engagement, financial sustainability for our companies. The real problem is that the situation got too complex, volatile, and uncertain to be managed by only one individual. So, yet research shows that effective executive teams are better than individual leaders, producing results in all areas of company performance, which means you need to transform your team in a chief executive team. Let me just be straightforward. You need a chief executive team because you cannot afford not having one. Business as usual is draining ideas, money, and engagement from your company, plus creating the wrong performance culture. It's time for a transformation of leadership. Start yours. Thank you.